When China's president boards a plane, the world pays attention. But this trip was different, because Xi Jinping didn't just bring ministers and diplomats. He brought 23 of China's most powerful corporate executives, CEOs, representing industries from energy to artificial intelligence, from infrastructure to telecommunications. Not soldiers, not ambassadors, dealmakers. And what they were about to do in Riyadh would tell us more about the future of global power than almost any military exercise or diplomatic summit could. To understand why this moment matters, you need to go back. For most of the 20th century, the story of Saudi Arabia was inseparable from the story of America. The relationship was elegant in its simplicity. Washington provided security, military bases, arms deals, a strategic umbrella across the Gulf. Riyadh provided oil, steady, reliable, priced in U.S. dollars. The petrodollar system that emerged from this arrangement didn't just fuel cars, it fueled American financial dominance for half a century. It was one of the most durable alliances in modern geopolitical history. But while the world was watching that relationship, another one was being quietly assembled. China began importing Saudi oil at significant scale in the 1990s. At first, it looked like simple commerce. A growing economy needed energy. Saudi Arabia had energy. Transaction complete. But then came the contractors. Chinese construction firms started winning bids across the kingdom: roads, ports, industrial facilities, power plants. The scope grew, year by year. Since 2005, Chinese companies have completed over $36 billion in contracting work in Saudi Arabia alone. Let that number sit for a moment. $36 billion in one country over 2 decades, building the physical bones of a nation. Today, China sources roughly 18% of its oil from Saudi Arabia, making the kingdom one of Beijing's single most critical energy suppliers. And bilateral trade between the two countries has surpassed $80 billion in a single year. These are not the numbers of a casual commercial relationship. These are the numbers of strategic interdependence, of two economies that have quietly become essential to each other, one needing the energy to fuel its manufacturing machine, the other needing the capital and construction capacity to build its future. And yet for years, this relationship barely registered in Western foreign policy coverage. The assumption, rarely stated but always present, was that Saudi Arabia was America's partner. Full stop. Whatever else was happening was background noise. That assumption is now dangerously outdated. Here's something most geopolitical commentary gets wrong about China's rise. Beijing doesn't project power primarily through military force. It doesn't rely on threatening sanctions. It doesn't use the IMF as a lever or demand political alignment as the price of partnership. It projects power through presence, through construction, through deals. And when Xi Jinping travels, he doesn't just bring diplomats to negotiate and generals to intimidate. He brings CEOs to build. The model works like this. The presidential visit creates the political architecture, the joint statements, the strategic frameworks, the public signals of alignment. That's the ceremony. That's what gets photographed. But simultaneously, one level beneath the ceremony, the real construction begins. Chinese executives sit across tables from their counterparts, converting political goodwill into commercial reality, into contracts, into joint ventures, into supply chain relationships that will outlast any single administration on either side. We saw this blueprint executed with remarkable precision during Xi's Riyadh visit in December 2022. In the space of a few days, Chinese companies signed 34 separate agreements with regional partners. Huawei embedded itself into Saudi digital infrastructure. China's Belt and Road Initiative was formally aligned with Saudi Vision 2030. Agreements covered cloud computing, aluminum manufacturing, energy, and cultural exchange. Total value, approximately $50 billion. From one visit. Now imagine that model applied again, with 23 CEOs, with a decade more of relationship building behind it, with both sides more ambitious, more confident, and more committed to delivering results. That's what landed in Riyadh. This is how China has become indispensable to so many countries. So quickly. Not through ideology, not through military alliance, through the simple, powerful act of showing up, building things, and creating dependencies that quietly reshape the strategic landscape. To fully understand why Saudi Arabia keeps opening its doors to these delegations, you have to understand the pressure Mohammed bin Salman is operating under. The kingdom sits on one of the largest oil reserves on earth. For generations, that was enough. Oil funded the government. Oil paid for social stability. Oil made Saudi Arabia matter on the world stage. But MBS has done the math, and the math is uncomfortable. Oil demand will eventually peak. The global energy transition, however uneven, however contested, is real and accelerating. Saudi Arabia's population is young, mostly under 35, and growing fast. That population needs jobs. It needs an economy that can deliver prosperity, without oil at its center. Vision 2030 is his answer, a sweeping, ambitious plan to diversify the Saudi economy. New tourism sectors, new entertainment industries, new technology hubs, new manufacturing bases. Neom, a planned city unlike anything ever attempted, is the most dramatic expression of this vision. But visions require partners. Western partners come with conditions. Human rights frameworks attached to investment, congressional oversight of arms deals, domestic political pressures that make consistency difficult. China comes with capital, with construction expertise, with technology platforms, and, crucially, with no political conditions attached. For a country trying to rapidly modernize, a partner who shows up, builds, and doesn't lecture is an extraordinarily valuable partner. And the sectors where China can contribute to Vision 2030 are precisely the sectors that matter most. Artificial intelligence, 5G telecommunications, electric vehicles, green hydrogen, advanced manufacturing, smart city technology. China's Belt and Road Initiative and Saudi Vision 2030 are not competing blueprints, they are potentially complementary ones. Two ambitious modernization projects that happen to need each other to reach their full potential. That complementarity is what fills a plane with 23 CEOs. Now we need to talk about what's underneath all of this. 2026 has been a year of significant turbulence in the Middle East. Regional conflict has intensified. Energy flows have been threatened. The Strait of Hormuz, that narrow, irreplaceable channel through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil and gas supply passes, has become a focal point of strategic anxiety. The disruption of that waterway doesn't stay in the region. It ripples outward instantly, into energy markets, into inflation figures, into the economic forecasts of countries that have never sent a soldier to the Gulf. And in moments like these, countries reassess. They ask, who actually has leverage here? Who can help? Who can be relied upon? For decades. Saudi Arabia's answer to that question was Washington, American security guarantees, American military hardware, American diplomatic architecture, holding the Gulf together. But that architecture has developed visible fractures. American attention has been divided by great power competition. The strategic pivot toward Asia has translated, in the perception of Gulf partners, into reduced presence in the Middle East. American domestic politics have made foreign policy consistency harder to sustain, and the credibility of American guarantees has been quietly, privately, questioned in capitals across the region. The signal that crystallized this shift came in April 2026. When crisis escalated around the Strait of Hormuz, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman reached out to Xi Jinping. Think about what that phone call represents. The country that has been Washington's anchor in the Middle East for half a century, in a moment of regional emergency, picked up the phone and called Beijing first. Analysts describe the moment plainly, countries around the world, including traditional U.S. allies, are no longer convinced that the United States alone can shape the global order. This does not mean Saudi Arabia is abandoning America. The security relationship is deep. It doesn't unravel in a single phone call. What we are watching instead is something more nuanced. Strategic hedging. Riyadh maintaining its American security relationship while simultaneously building serious economic and diplomatic depth with Beijing, refusing to be a satellite of any single power, choosing deliberately to exist in a multipolar world and extract maximum advantage from that multiplicity. One final layer deserves attention. 2026 marks the 10th anniversary of the China-Saudi Arabia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. A decade ago, that partnership was largely transactional: oil and construction contracts, modest diplomatic engagement, a relationship of convenience between two countries that needed something from each other. Today, it spans finance, technology, diplomacy, culture, and increasingly, security cooperation. The depth has changed. The ambition has changed. Anniversaries in diplomacy are not purely ceremonial. They are opportunities to signal direction, to show the world and Washington what a relationship has become and where it intends to go. Bringing 23 CEOs to Riyadh on the 10th anniversary of a strategic partnership is not coincidence. It is a statement, delivered not in words, but in the most concrete language available: people, capital, and commitment. When China's president boards a plane, the world pays attention. But this trip was different, because those 23 CEOs didn't just represent companies. They represented a strategy, a decade in the making, patient, disciplined, and now arriving at scale. Saudi Arabia is not abandoning the West, but it is refusing to be defined by it. China is not replacing America, but it is filling the spaces America is leaving behind. And the world that emerges from these quiet, boardroom-level decisions will look fundamentally different from the one we inherited. This is not a story about one trip. It is not a story about 23 executives or a single set of deal signings. It is a story about who writes the rules of the world that comes next. And if you weren't watching Riyadh, you were looking in the wrong place.